is good to be here. It's been 3 years since I've given a presentation like this, so if I look lost, it's because I am. So bear with me and enjoy the ride. Is this clicker going to work for me? Yes, radical simplification, humanizing the future of digital marketing. As if not having done this for 3 years wasn't enough, the topic I've been given today is predicting the future, a pretty non-trivial task. So as I was thinking about this presentation, I thought, well, how do you do that? And there's this quote, history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. No one knows who said this. It's variously attributed to Mark Twain and Albert Einstein and probably Abraham Lincoln, as online quotes often are. But what this quote tells us is, in order to look forwards, you should start by looking back. And if you can find some undeniable trends from the journeys that we've been on in the past, maybe you've got a hope at predicting what's coming next. The digital revolution. We forget how much the world's changed in the last 50 years sometimes. We digitized pretty much everything. We digitized things like photography. And this started earlier than we often remember. Way back in 1975, Kodak had a digital camera. It was terrible. It was really hard to use. It didn't do very much. And then over the course of the next 30 years, this digital camera evolved into the digital cameras we kind of know somewhat today. Where they're really simple, really easy to use, single button, they seem to take care of everything for us. The same's true with things like maps. The first GPS devices were really bad. You actually had to put the map in on a bit of cellophane yourself. And then over time, it became the GPS devices that we were used to in cars just a few years ago. The same happened with music, of course, with CD players, and then into MP3 players and the like. And knowledge as well got digitized. And the first versions of that were things like Encarta. And any of you old enough to remember the CD that you had to put in your PC? And it was slightly easier than a book to use, but not much. And of course, we connected all of the world's knowledge to the internet and made everything immediately addressable. The first undeniable trend I think we can see from the digital revolution is that technology gets simpler over time. This is not a new idea. There's a great quote from a guy called Alan Kay, who's one of the most quotable computer scientists of all time, who said simple things should be simple, complex things should be possible. Another way of reframing that is that great technology makes simple things simple and complex things possible. This is not just true in the digital revolution. In pretty much all technology, we see the early versions of things are really, really complex. Take something like a thermostat. This is an early digital thermostat. And they almost market themselves on complexity when they first come out. You have these programmable things, 14-day timer, 4 on and off times a day. And they're really, really hard to use. And through time, we end up with thermostats as we know them today. One way of framing this is that we move from humans enabling technology. That's to say, early versions of thermostats, I need to adapt my thinking to how the thermostat works. When I go on vacation, I probably need to dig out the manual again. And if I'm only going over for a weekend, it's so hard I don't even bother turning my heating off. To technology enabling humans. Modern thermostats are so smart, I don't even understand how they work. They appear like magic, but they actually serve me. The same has been true with our personal devices. Early personal devices, we had to change our handwriting so the machine could understand us. And now these things just seem to work. We move from humans enabling technology to technology enabling humans. With any technology, if you want to know how far along this line you are, early versions of technology, people tend to talk about signing up for certification programs and reading manuals. As we move forwards, we end up with technology which people talk about as intuitive, and they use phrases like, it just works. And a lot of consumer technology today has kind of made this leap. We've invested trillions of dollars in working out how to build consumer technology, and a lot of that journey has been about making software and tools easier to use. This is what we call progress, moving from humans enabling technology to technology enabling humans. So if the undeniable trend number one is that technology gets simpler over time, in fact, I'm going to rewrite that because it's not really about simplicity, because actually some of this advanced technology is really smart under the covers. I think the first undeniable trend is that technology inevitably gets more human-friendly over time. The technology that wins is the technology that adapts itself to us and enables us, rather than us having to adapt ourselves to technology. But there's something else we can learn from the digital revolution. The digital revolution was in part useful early on because it enabled interoperability. Everything was ones and zeros, which allowed it to talk to one another. We could take our digital camera, we could use our memory stick, we could hunt to find that annoying thing you had to plug them into, and then you could get your photo on a PC. That meant you could edit it, you could maybe apply a filter to it, and you could send it to your friend. You could take your CD, you could rip it to your hard drive, you could find, again, another annoying cable to attach it to your iPod, and you could put songs in whatever order you wanted. This was a novel concept at the time that digital music players first came in. This was pretty annoying, and yet people got a huge amount of utility from it. But over time, of course, we didn't stop there. Interoperability became convergence. We ended up with single devices that we, for some inexplicable reason, we call phones, but they're able to do all these different things. They've got a camera embedded, a GPS embedded, they've got an internet device in there, they've got a music player. All of these things came together into what we today call a phone. Now, something else that happened, other than removing the need for cables all over the place, this enabled something else much more exciting. And to tell you what I think that is, I'm actually going to take you to near where I live over in San Francisco. If you're ever over in San Francisco or over the Bay in Berkeley, there's a science museum which looks way uglier than the science museum just over there, this Lawrence Hall of Science, which is named after this guy called Ernest Lawrence. Now, Ernest Lawrence is a fascinating guy who got a Nobel Prize for inventing the cyclotron, the thing that allows us to smash atoms together and start to unlock the secrets of the universe. But I don't believe that Ernest Lawrence's biggest innovation was actually the cyclotron at all. There's a small display at the back of the Lawrence Hall of Science which shows some lectures that Ernest Lawrence gave and talks about his team. The single biggest innovation that Ernest Lawrence made way back in the 1930s was to bring a multidisciplinary team together. He was the first person that convinced a university that the engineering department and the physics department didn't need to be silos. He had engineers and physicists working together all day, every day. This unlocked a non-linear advance. There was this kind of amazing non-linear innovation that happened because they brought these two things together. These two things that had been done completely independently before, all of a sudden were brought together. I believe the second big trend, and we see this repeat itself time and time again, is that non-linear innovation often happens when you bring things together. This certainly happened from the moment of convergence. If we look at things like putting a camera and an internet device together, that's enabled things like TikTok. Putting a GPS and an internet device together, that's enabled companies such as Grab. You simply couldn't have that technology unless there was a large number of people who had these convergent devices in their pockets. Equally, music players and internet devices led to technology like Spotify. All of a sudden, I've got access to the entire world's music collection in my pocket. This is really interesting in APAC right now. Huge number of people coming online with these mobile devices. Since the beginning of the pandemic, 200 million more people now have these convergent devices in their pocket. And if I look for the next big trend, I always look for, or wave of innovation, I always look for the intersections. Where is it I can use this secure device that's inside someone's pocket that's connected and got location? Is location-based audio the next thing? There's all sorts of possibility for innovation, particularly here in APAC. 200 million is a huge population who all of a sudden can be brought tools based on the fact that a large number of them had these devices in their pocket. So what does all of this have to do with ad tech? Reaching and selling to people used to be pretty simple. You do some marketing, you come to conferences like this, you pick up the phone. How are we doing in ad tech? I'd argue pretty badly. This is a day in the life for people who are using programmatic media today. They use things like viewability reports, fraud and brand safety reports. They use ad server and MTA reports. They use bidding reports. They use campaign goal kind of metrics and so on and so forth. And this is their day-to-day life. Most advertising technology today is not yet human-friendly at all. We're pretty early on this progress bar. This is a problem. It's not just a problem in terms of efficiency. The single biggest complaint or concern I have from our customers around the world right now, every agency exec I meet, is staffing. A recent report we commissioned showed that Within a year of people starting their first AdOps job, be that trading or publisher-side AdOps, 50% of people would leave that job, and most of them would never return to that kind of job again. That's a problem. That's a problem for all of us. I believe this is a generational shift. I think the generation coming through have grown up with consumer technology, which is intuitive. They reject the fact they have to be stuck over here. They expect more from technology, and they should. Another big thing that's happened in ad tech is a massive growth in the number of companies. We've been here a while. We're back here. But we've seen thousands and thousands of companies come into this space over the last decade or so. No matter how you look at it, display loom escapes or various other infographics, marketers today have their work cut out for them. What does this remind us of? It's really complex. We think in terms of three-letter acronyms, DMPs and DSPs and CDPs. We care a lot about interoperability. I don't think that's where the next big wave of innovation comes from. So to bring this back to the beginning, predicting the future. Ad tech must become more human-friendly, moving from humans enabling the technology to technology enabling the humans. Why am I telling you this if this is inevitable? I think there's one of three things that everyone in this room can do related to this. First of all, if you're in the role of selecting technology, unfortunately, the way a lot of selection goes today, it actually biases towards complexity. Procurement departments have spreadsheets full of questions like how many times a day can you turn your thermostat on or off? They're not framed on what's the problem that needs to be solved and does it work. The technology you select should be based on how easy it is for your operators to actually get their job done. How does it enable them to do the core job that they're responsible for in marketing? Demand it. If you're not in the role of selecting the technology, you should expect more. If you're in an AdOps role today or a trading role today, you should expect more from your technology. Or if you're in my role on the technology side, it's our responsibility to build it. Great technology makes simple things simple and complex things possible. The second big prediction is that the next wave of outsized returns will be found at the intersections. Be that intersections between teams, between planning, activation, and measurement, or intersection between technology. When you're doing this, you have to start always with real human or marketing challenges. Too much technology today starts with how it works. This is often true in the early versions of technology. We build a whole ecosystem of product marketing around it, rather than starting with the real human or marketing challenges. The second part of this is you need to resist arbitrary boundaries. When Ernest Lawrence brought together physicists and engineers for the first time, he had a massive political battle on his hands. Today, we've introduced these random arbitrary boundaries between things like DSPs and DMPs and SSPs that are completely meaningless if we frame things around the jobs to be done. Equally, teams are often fragmented between planning, activation, and measurement that make no real sense when you frame things around the core jobs and responsibilities of marketing. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. I just want to ask you a couple of questions before we move on to the next session. So just taking into account what the previous panel discussion session was focusing on, so some of the challenges that marketers are facing at the moment, having to deal with preparing themselves for a new kind of first-party data world, what might be some of the sort of tips that you might mention in conjunction with your top tips at the end of those slides to kind of get them started on their journey?
I think you've got to expect more from technology. I don't think any human is capable of working out where to use contextual information, where to use first-party information, where to use probabilistic identity, so on and so forth. I think that's really where technology comes in. I think we care too much about how it works. In the same way, I don't know how my Nest thermostat works. I'm okay with that, because it works. And it hides all of the annoying complexity away from me. I get a little bit worried when we spend too much of our time thinking about exactly how it must work in every possible instance, because there's billions of permutations, and not expecting more from our technology. In terms of providing tools that help us plan accurately, in terms of helping us build tools that can turn those plans into things that are easy to execute, and ultimately, measuring campaigns. So I think too much of our obsession at the moment is framed on how the technology works, not on the human problems that we need to solve.
I often give the example of how, when I was growing up, my parents were very comfortable operating the VCR because it seemed quite straightforward. Now, when it comes to streaming TV on a laptop, they want to understand how that's possible. And a bit similarly to you, I just tell them, don't ask questions, it works, watch it, it looks good.
Yeah.
So, what would your advice be though to marketers that are struggling with the concept of pushing back on complexity, either because perhaps they're within position that perhaps we're talking about marketers within brands that are in positions within that organisation that don't necessarily have the decision making influence and power over what technology tools and solutions are procured, or maybe it's just that they're finding it impossible to pull themselves back from the complexity because it's surrounding them. What might be some of the things that you'd suggest?
You've got to have the conversation at every level. I think, I see a lot of decision making that happens inside brands, inside agencies, inside teams, and there's a huge amount of confusion right now. I see this day in, day out. I have trading teams come and complain to me about some of their existing tooling, it being really, really hard. I see executives then not know how to get out of that. And the day-to-day conversation just isn't happening. So I think it has to start with conversation. I think everything has to be framed honestly. I'm a product guy, so I would say this, but it has to be framed on the core jobs to be done. What is it that a marketer needs? They need to be able to understand their audience. They need to understand opportunities to growth. They need to be able to plan effectively. They need to be able to turn those plans into things they can execute without a loss in resolution or without a loss of the idea. They need to be able to measure and iterate on that idea. These are the core jobs to be done. No one went to study marketing to work out how to get a MTA report into Excel and to join it with an ad server report.
Really? You sure?
I hope not.
I guess as well, what have you seen with some of your clients that are approaching things, via the methods that you're suggesting and having a bit of success with stripping out the complexity?
They tend to have a bit more fun. We're not allowed to release it yet, but we've got a case study which showed that we drove attrition down massively because people are not doing the mundane tasks all day, every day. We tend to find they can onboard people more effectively, so they can start using the tools within a week. We tend to find that the very nature of conversations between, say, brands and agencies changes from in-the-weeds parameter tweaking to testing and learning with different audiences and different messaging, and testing and learning with different marketing tactics. So really, I think the sad truth about ad tech today is it's too much about how the technology works in terms of, let's say the parameter tweaking, and that's what people get obsessed with because that's what they're doing all day, every day, and not nearly enough about the actual marketing challenges. And so we have seen that with a number of brands right now, and it's pretty exciting.
So it's kind of got dual purpose. They're getting their jobs done in a more enjoyable way, and they're actually, getting some satisfaction, and that's keeping them in the jobs longer.
Yeah.
So, final word then, where I can sort of sense you're somewhat of an optimist, but a realist. Where are we going to see this part of the ad tech industry heading in the coming couple of years?
I think there's broadly two paths. I think we'll end up with some people taking the path of bringing these things together. There's a famous quote about there's only two types of disruption: you either bundle or you unbundle. I think we'll see some people who bring these things together. They'll bring together their planning teams and their activation teams. They might even bring their creative teams to be part of that virtuous life cycle, and they'll have technology which enables them to do that. Or we'll have we'll have some people take the more specialization route, and they'll choose 140 different platforms which are optimal in their individual way. My view very much is that your rate of progress is directly proportional to how quickly you can iterate. As in how quickly can you kind of test and learn with marketing ideas, with audience ideas, with messaging ideas. And so the companies that are going to lean more into this kind of joined up approach are going to out-innovate those that don't. And the ones that don't are going to get stuck in kind of ad tech hell of working out where they left their iPod cable to connect these discrete pieces of the ad tech kind of Lumascape.
No one wants to be in ad tech hell. Thank you very much, Peter. Thanks for your presentation and thanks for answering my questions.
Thank you.